Hello, my name is Kai, and today we're going to be talking about Liverpool's victory against Nottingham Forest at the City Ground. But before I get into it, it'd be great if you could like the video, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Twitter and Substack at The Counterpress. Now, we're going to start by looking at the formation that we played, because it's good to get a sense of what the team actually looked like before we look at some clips. Now, I didn't really like initially seeing Dom at right back. We saw that Curtis made a lot more sense at right back. Curtis is someone who likes to take touches, he likes to control the game, and I think realistically you shouldn't be playing him as your 10. If Curtis is your 10, he wants to drop back. He's going to try to fill spaces back here, not up here. Sometimes he'll make these runs in behind, which we've seen him do, of course. We've seen Milos Kerkez assist Curtis Jones when he was at right back and he was playing off the shoulder, a little bit off Salah, able to get in and score a goal. But ultimately, it's not really what he does. He likes to be in these areas and pick up the ball, so I think it would have made more sense from the jump just to do this. We know Curtis was good at right back, better in the initial phase of build-up, allows you to put Dom into our press. Not to say that Curtis isn't a good presser, but Dom is a little bit better, and it would keep Dom central to do progression, to really impact in his most favorable position. You can also do something like this. We know Alexis is very good at filling in space. This is ultimately what we saw, because I think Arne recognizes that Alexis is good at reacting to movement. He did it with Messi in Argentina in the World Cup when they won it. He knows how to fill in these spaces and make these runs and occupy the box when he needs to. And ultimately, he did score the goal. He even scored a goal that was ruled out for, in my opinion, a bit of an unfair reason. But this is what Arne went with. I think long term, at least for this season, Dom has to be your left center mid. Curtis is your right back when others are injured. And you figure out the rest of the positions. If you have Florian Wirtz in your team, you have Alexis McAllister or Ryan Gravenberch on the right here. I know there's issues if Max in the pivot, is this really defensively sound enough, but I think Curtis is good enough in that position when you need him to be. But yeah, this is how he looked more second half, and in the first half we, saw this, which ultimately didn't work because our midfield isn't great at the moment. The balance isn't really there. But let's not look at some of the clips and really try to understand what is going on. So I've sort of gotten to the flow of trying to look at the highlights first before I look at the actual game. So you're going to see a lot of initial clips that are from the extended highlights that Liverpool has. And then I kind of look at the actual game for anything, particularly interesting in terms of build-up. So I liked what we saw here. Ultimately, this resulted in a, counterattack that, we could have conceded from. But I do like some of the build-up here. I like seeing some of our midfielders a lot deeper trying to pick up the ball here. You have all three of our, main midfielders here. Of course, Curtis is the 10 and Dom's playing right back, but I do like seeing them deeper trying to pick up the ball. I think this was a bit of a miscommunication, but there are ideas here. You have people like Hugo and Mo trying to run off into more blind spot type areas. I think ultimately this didn't work because as press resistant as you expect Curtis to be, sometimes he's going to end up losing the ball, right? This is also why you kind of don't want him in these 10 positions, because if he wanders out wide, it's a lot more dangerous because there will be people who will go ahead and follow him. He's not specifically part of the buildup because he's not starting deeper. So, you have chances for things like this to happen, loses the ball, and it ultimately leads to a counterattack. Of course, Dom isn't really a right back, so although he's good defensively, he's good at many different things to play the position. Sometimes he's going to lose his man, sometimes he's not going to understand when we're trying to play offside, and we get a big save from Ali here. But again, I like some of the ideas here. I like, Milos being confident on the ball. I just think Curtis isn't really fit to be the 10. You want him in the pivot, you want him at right back. Deeper positions, maybe you can play the 6. So again, we have a lot of things going on here, but what I do like is, the press here. Of course, why is Dom all the way up here? It's not really a question. We can ignore this for now. The pressing structure here is pretty good. We're committing more people to the press. I like that there are people kind of following their man. They're looking at different places to mark. But you see as this clip progresses forward, we end up getting the ball to get flung out. We intercept it, this time through Ryan Gravenberch. It comes to Dom. He has all of these different options. He could find Cody Gakpo if he turned. He could find Hugo Ekitike. He can find Alexis. He can find Mo. He lingers a little bit too long, which is maybe why Dom shouldn't be the 10. Maybe he should be on the left side of the pivot where he can cross and pass on his instep, which he's much better with, and shoot in those positions too, but he does find Mo, which I don't think is a bad choice. Mo gets the ball inside, ultimately overshoots it. Cody doesn't get there, but I thought there were some promising things with the press. I mean, it's not as aggressive as Klopp, but I am seeing us progressively get better out of possession, which is a good sign. So here we're seeing an example of, Dom being on the left side of the pivot. We have Curtis at right back, and I'm telling you that even though it is better this way, Alexis in the 10, this situation, there are still issues. I mean, our midfield is bypassed. Dom has to come out wide to help Milos Kerkez a little bit. We fully get bypassed. They have maybe a better midfield than us, you could say. I mean, if you have Morgan Gibbs-White, Elliot Anderson, there's at least a better structure of build-up, and you have some athletes in there. You can only really say something similar about Dom in this midfield. So they kind of bypass us. They get the ball through, and ultimately, again, we're saved, this time not by Ali, but by Virgil intervening. Really, we're very lucky that we have Virgil and Ali and Ibu in this team, because our midfield is, although somewhat technical, they have a bit about them. There's not a lot of shielding or defensive cover. Now, that doesn't mean they're bad at dueling. They're pretty good duelists, but anticipation when the ball is in the air, following the ball when it's played quickly, these are things that we really can't do well because we don't really have players with the real defensive mindset, right? Alexis can read these situations, but he has no pace. Dom can be everywhere, but he's not really a controller, you know what I mean? So he's not a natural DM either. Ryan definitely isn't. And Curtis, while being a good defender, struggles with the run tracking that is kind of needed from someone who you want to start every single week. And it feels at times that every time we lose the ball, we can't get the ball, it's a counterattack. We don't get the ball really here. We lose it. The ball gets progressed forward through to Morgan Gibbs-White. They get it out wide, and ultimately they're almost able to generate, a serious effort. Every time we lose the ball, there's no cover centrally. There's no one helping on the wings, really. Our wingers don't do a good job of really defending, like when they're tracking back, like in transitions. Of course, when we're in a settled block, they do decently, but we're talking about in these situations, they just don't really do it. And that's not to say that our wingers and these players are horrible. I mean, Ibu is able to get a pass completed here into a wide area, and we're able to see Cody Gakpo instead of, coming and cutting inside and shooting. We see Cody cut inside and dink a really nice ball over to Mo, who, after he ends up receiving the ball, heads it back to Curtis, who, again, can make these box-crashing runs, and he attempts to score, and of course he doesn't, but there's some, positive attributes here. We see what I said earlier about Curtis being able to box crash. We see decent play with our wingers. But again, defensively, if we lose the ball, just so easily bypassed. There's no concern in this team about technical ability and being able to do some magical things in possession. But out of possession, there's just so many glaring issues that are a combination of profile problems, like the wrong type of player, combination of bad out of possession coaching. Even though that is improving, we now at least have a soft press and are committing one more person forward. It's the +1. It's not as good as we saw under Klopp. We don't have a Fabinho type midfielder. We don't have someone who's a real combatant in this team. And that is definitely problematic in an era for the Prem where people are moving towards long balls and these styles. So this is the sequence of the disallowed goal. I want to talk about this because I know this is desperation and committing bodies forward, but generally good play. I mean, Dom gets the ball. He gives it to Joe. Joe's able to find Dom again, this time dragging players out, giving Dom absolute acres of space. I mean, there's so much that he could do when he receives the ball. Of course, in the modern Prem, you're not going to get that much time on the ball by the time you're going to receive it. I mean, there's going to be players pressing you. So Dom, of course, has to pass the ball back. Joe then tries to just fling it inside. Ibu is able to maintain possession, get the ball outside to Rio. We know in this game that Rio was incredible. I even thought Chiesa was decent. I mean, when you bring in actual wingers into a system that's really demanding for it, you can do a lot. He's able to do step overs. He's able to create that separation that we really need. He's able to get the ball inside, go to the byline, cross inside. Initially, Hugo tries to get there. Alexis does end up getting there. He scores, but it's disallowed. But again, Alexis is demonstrating that he can fill in space, occupy the box, play the 10 when we need to. But on top of that, you also see Rio really coming into his own, showing that he can play both sides. He's not just a left winger. He doesn't need to just carry centrally. He can go to the byline, chip it inside, cross, cut back, and you're really seeing a serious player there. I think I'm going to make a article very soon. It might even be out before this video, maybe after this video, about what we should be doing with Rio, how the management has been, what it will look like going forward, what it maybe should look like now, maybe what should change. So I'll definitely talk about that. Again, in the second half, we saw a bit more energy from Paul. He just knows it's been lost. He tries to just get in there and make a challenge. You can see, he's just being that combative, good duelist that I was talking about earlier. In a small space, he's really able to make a big impact. He tries to get the ball, ultimately fails, gets out wide. You have Dom as the pressing trigger. He comes inside to try to win the ball. Ibrahim Sangare ends up getting the ball forward. You have Joe Gomez trying to hold him back from right back. Passes the ball out again, and we force Nottingham Forest into a, really low XG chance from Sangare. There's so many players around here who are preventing him from passing again. There's going to be someone who ends up pressing you. And I think that was ultimately pretty good defending and like a mid-block with a bit of pressing. I thought that was more positive from the team, working more as a unit to kind of overcome the frailties that we kind of have individually. Each individual player isn't necessarily a good defender, and especially not really a 6. So this is the start of the long-drawn, arduous process that led to us. We end up trying to get the ball inside through Robbo. Doesn't really stick. It gets to Jolie. 5-centimeter tolerance. He was onside. Ball comes back to Alexis, and again, right place at the right time. We've seen it many times with Alexis. He knows how to fill in space. He gets there. He scores the goal. Now, it's not to say that this performance was good. It was horrible. It showed a lot of the big issues with slot ball, but it also showed us the light. It said that if we can play Curtis at right back, if we can give Rio more minutes, Chiesa potentially more minutes, or at least rotate our wing options a little bit more, this team definitely has a chance to pick up more points, maybe do better in Europe. I mean, these are the things that we have to look at. The Premier League's gone. We're out of the EFL Cup, the Carabao Cup. We still have the FA Cup. We still have the UCL. If we can be hard to beat, improve that press, improve our wing play, ultimately we have a chance to win something this season, despite how, horrible our I wouldn't say our start, the period immediately after our start and onward was. Now, I want to keep talking about this idea of the press. Look, there were a lot of people online talking about how getting rid of Dom from the press was an issue. I think it's more so having Dom, it's not necessarily just that, because Curtis is also a good presser, right? I think it's just you would rather have someone like Dom centrally, someone who's very comfortable in midfield and is more of could be more of a maverick type player than Curtis, who's more of a controller, if you have to. Ideally, you'd want both of them in your midfield with flow. But in the scenario we have where we don't really have a right back, this is more so what you want to do. Curtis presses relentlessly. Klopp would have been proud. There's our Genie Wijnaldum. Doesn't end up getting the ball, but again, it's about pressing. Look at how positive we are when pressing. Of course, Cody's holding the line a little bit because he's anticipating this pass, but Alexis, very positive. He's coming forward. And we keep seeing it. Alexis overcommits a little bit, but we're still seeing it. Milos Kerkez then comes in. We're really overloading the side. I mean, look how many players we have shielding this pass back. Just impossible. So he has to hit the ball more centrally to where there isn't cover anymore because Alexis has moved. You have Ryan and 3 players basically covering this area. Of course, it's, Amari Hutchinson's a very technical footballer. He ends up getting the ball to Igor Jesus, who's able to pass it back to Morgan Gibbs-White. Now, I almost said Morgan Rogers. Morgan Gibbs-White, which of course you're going to expect from Brazilian to be technical. But again, Ibu committing here forces him to do this pass. Again, this is the issue when I said Alexis overcommitted earlier because he's out of position and can't track Morgan Gibbs-White, which is a bit of an issue. And there's a little bit of space being developed here. But I do like that we're trying to press. It's going to look sloppy and problematic at first because we haven't done it in a very long time in a very aggressive way like this. But as we continue to do this, Arne is saying the players are getting fitter and fitter. Maybe we're actually going to see a much harder to bypass press that hopefully acts as a secondary playmaker to Florian Wirtz and generates a couple of goals for us as well. They ultimately end up getting the ball. we're pretty settled. There's about 6 players back. There are people tracking back. Of course, I'd want Curtis and Cody and people to get back faster, but not necessarily the end of the world. Now, I was talking about how Curtis doesn't really make sense as your 10, and this is kind of why. Curtis is always going to try to drop back and build up from the back, regardless of where he's playing. And of course, that's not really a bad thing. There are many 10s who do this, but to be honest, we have a striker in Hugo who doesn't really hold the line very well. He wants to drop in. We ultimately end up with no box presence at all, and I think that if we have a 10, at least in this current iteration of Liverpool, it can't be someone who wants to drop in and build up from the back. It just leads to very slow play. And it, of course, Ibu shouldn't just be launching the ball forward, but honestly, there's no progression here. What is he going to do? Pass it to Alexis, and then what? There's just acres of space. There are players in wide areas. There's no one to connect to. I mean, Ryan's in this position. Where does he go? To Mo? It's not a very obvious pattern of play, and that's kind of why we're going to see unnecessary long balls and issues. And if you had a 10 who was further forward, maybe that would offer a pass, more centrally for someone like Ibu to find or someone like Alexis to find. And that's why you kind of want an Alexis or a Dom or obviously Flo to be in that 10 position and not someone like Curtis who's going to fill in space and try to build up from the back. And this is more so where I want to see Curtis. I want to see Curtis on the right-hand side or on the left-hand side of a 3, building up from the back, whether he's the right back, whether he's the DM, whether he's somehow maybe a left back. I'd like to see him build up in that way so that, you kind of get the 3 players who I think should be the ones building up from the back. The 2 center backs and somebody who's more comfortable in these deep areas, who controls well, who's technical enough, who can release passes at good pace, well placed, not afraid to pass the ball forward. And I think although Curtis may take too many touches, is capable of doing that more than a Ryan, more mobile than an Alexis, and you don't want to put someone like Dom that far out of the game. So I think it makes the most sense. And you see it generates some kind of attack from up. It's definitely a better idea than what we've been doing. This is just another example of how we're building up, especially in this 3-2-5 that I keep talking about. Dom is dropping in here to be the center of a 3. Curtis is also, of course, deep because it's effectively what he does. This time we kind of see some help in build-up. You have another player dropping back, just showing all the players we have dropping back. This time it's Hugo Ekitike dropping in to pass the ball. Curtis, more comfortable in these deeper areas, passes the ball back. We now have Curtis in the 3 because we saw Dom earlier run forward. So very fluid. I'm kind of showing how non-rigid these build-up structures have to be. You can have different players in different positions, which is going to be relevant. I'm bringing this up now because when I do end up making the video as to how Ekitike and Isak are going to play together, you'll see a similar type of fluidity in different areas. Ball ends up getting thrown forward. Again, Hugo doesn't really have the box presence. You have Alexis who's filling in the space because it's what he does best. Keeps dropping back. We end up getting the ball inevitably out wide to Mo. We want to create more scenarios that can put Mo in these positions where there's no one really on him. You're not really doubling up on him. He's in space and he can pick out a pass. He can find Alexis, find whoever's on rushing. Of course, you'd want your 9 a little further forward, but I mean, you have to take the good and the bad with Hugo. Sometimes he's not really going to be in position. Attempts to put the ball inside. Ultimately, nothing happens, but showing that like fluidity and build-up, players dropping in, not necessarily a bad thing. There is something left in this team. There are players who are going to be able to build up. We are going to be able to play football. You can see how maybe if this was a pacier winger like Frimpong with a actual striker on rushing like Alexander Isak, maybe, this team could work. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that we should keep Arne, but I do think there is some level of him being hard done by this season and not really being his fault. Now, I know this video has been like a bit all over the place. I mean, it's kind of hard to talk about a game that was so horrible to watch. Even when I rewatched it, it was almost worse. But the point of this is, as an analyst, I'm looking for ideas that Arne has. And if we do want to move further forward, if we're looking a little bit further forward with, let's just say, for example, something like this. I mean, there is a pattern of build-up here. It does allow Milos Kerkez to go further forward. It does, allow maybe something like this, getting Cody away from being able to just shoot on sight, tether Wirtz to Salah, in this right half space. Of course, you want flow on the left or central, but again, you take the good with the bad. Of course, you'd rather Verge central too. I mean, you don't really want him passing from these positions since he's, a righty. It makes it kind of difficult for some of the passing angles here. Pass across his body to Gakpo, not great, but he can definitely do a job here. There is some kind of build up here. Hugo being able to drop in, flow. Hugo can make this run. Also allows for maybe Dom to be in here instead of Milos Kerkez. Maybe something like this happens more often. Maybe Cody comes inside, you get an overlap, or you could also get this. I mean, of course, this is a bit terrifying, but Jones can form a pseudo pivot and you can get both of them in here in some capacity, which is going to be part of my conversation when we do look at the two-striker system and what that could look like alongside a winger. But there's ideas here, there's potential for build-up. Curtis gives you a pretty unique solution at right back if we actually want to stick with it, and I honestly think that we should. Even when Jeremy is back, I think when Frimpong's back, what it gives you is a person who can play right wing, honestly. And you keep Rio as the left winger, you keep Chiesa as the backup striker. I mean, it's not the worst idea in the world. Even if you want, you can maybe start Rio. Of course, there's a couple of caveats here. I mean, you don't want to start him every game, and then maybe Cody is your backup striker, Chiesa is your backup left winger, and then Jeremy Frimpong is your backup right winger. I mean, it's definitely an idea, and I don't necessarily hate it. But I just wanted to go over that briefly because there honestly wasn't like a lot to actually cover in this game, and just giving you a little nugget of information as to like what we might do in the future is probably important. But that is it for this video. If you like the video, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Twitter and on Substack. I am going to have 3 articles a week, maybe not this week, but hopefully next week. I'll try to at least have 1 or 2 out by the end of this week, and I'm trying to be more consistent with YouTube, but you know how that goes. I'll try to get to every day. At the very least, this video isn't, coming out a month after my last one. We're getting a bit better. I'll try to have these these analyses out immediately after the game, like a day after the game. Try to have reactions out maybe right after the game, within a few hours of the game, and then some kind of pre-game build-up like I did for this one. But yeah, as always, thanks for watching.